on Roll Credits, we're diving into The Sheep Detectives, a mystery where the investigators aren't exactly who you'd expect.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one.
It's going to be a fun one. So, welcome everyone. Today we have a very special deep dive for you, exploring a film that honestly sounds like some kind of, fever dream on paper.
It really does. I mean, it's basically Babe meets Knives Out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it secretly turned out to be this absolute cinematic triumph. Our mission today is to sift through a massive stack of sources for you.
Right. We've got cast interviews, production deep dives, visual effects breakdowns, all sorts of critical reviews.
Yeah, to figure out how they balanced, absurdity and comedy with a genuine whodunit and, incredible heart.
Which is no small feat.
Not at all. So do you want to give us a quick spoiler-light overview of the premise?
Yeah, absolutely. So we follow this guy, George Hardy, who is played just brilliantly by Hugh Jackman.
Oh, he's so good in this.
He really is. So George is this lonely but very devoted English shepherd. And his main social interaction is just, reading Agatha Christie-style murder mysteries to his flock every single night.
Right, because he assumes it just calms them down.
Exactly. But the twist is, the sheep actually understand every word of English.
Which is wild.
It's totally wild. And because they've listened to so many of these books, they know all the tropes and rules of detective fiction. So when George turns up dead, the local human police are completely clueless.
They just have no idea what they're doing.
None at all. So the sheep decide they have to step up and crack the case themselves.
It's such a brilliant setup. But, to understand how this bizarre premise actually made it to the screen, we really have to look at its origins.
Yeah.
Because this wasn't just pitched last year.
Oh, no. Not even close. This project had a 19-year incubation period.
19 years. I mean, that is just unheard of in Hollywood for something like this. Usually a high-concept idea gets fast-tracked or just, dies in development hell immediately.
Yeah, exactly. But producer Lindsay Dorn was just obsessed with it. And the crazy part is how she found the source material.
Right, the German book.
Yeah, it's based on a 2005 German bestseller by Leonie Swan called 3 Bags Full.
Right.
But Dorn didn't hear about it from, an agent or a studio pitch. She literally heard about the premise from her doctor during a routine visit.
Wait, her doctor pitched her a movie?
Yeah. 19 years ago. She tracked down the book, saw the potential, and immediately called up screenwriter Craig Mazin.
Okay, so this is the part I have to push back on. Because on paper, this creative team makes zero sense.
It really is a strange mix.
It's a wild mismatch. I mean, Craig Mazin is the guy who created Chernobyl and The Last of Us. He writes about, post-apocalyptic trauma and grim human suffering.
Yeah, he does not exactly scream cozy family comedy.
Right. And then they pair him with director Kyle Balda, who is the animation guy behind Minions.
Yeah, but it's like mixing oil and water.
Exactly. How does a guy known for harrowing post-apocalyptic stories write a movie about talking sheep?
Well, it sounds counterintuitive, but Mazin's involvement is actually the secret weapon here.
Really? How so?
So Mazin has this great quote. He says, "I am at my funniest when things are bad."
Oh, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Right. He grounds the story in total emotional honesty. The comedy isn't just cheap farm gags or winking at the audience.
Right. There's no Shrek-style pop culture references.
Exactly. The comedy comes from the fact that these sweet animals are earnestly trying to navigate a real tragedy. And then Balda comes in with his kinetic visual style, and it just perfectly balances Mazin's emotional weight.
Well, and it clearly worked on the cast. I mean, the trivia about Hugh Jackman signing on is amazing.
Oh, I love this story.
Yeah, so for those of you listening, Jackman didn't even know who else was cast when he got the script. He just sat down to read it, and he actually cried 3 times.
Which is wild for a movie about CGI sheep.
Right. He texted his agent by page 25 and was just like, I have to do this. He said the script was just overflowing with genuine heart.
And that emotional sincerity is exactly what drove the physical production, too, because they had to literally shift their perspective to match the sheep.
Yeah, you can't just shoot this like a normal human drama.
Right. The production designer, Susie Davies, built the fictional village of Denmark completely from the ground up, keeping the audience's point of view firmly with the flock.
Which means the camera is, 2 feet off the ground the whole time?
Exactly. So Davies focused incredibly hard on low-to-the-ground details, like the textures of the skirting boards, the floors, the carpets.
That is so smart.
Yeah, and she had to leave physical space in the framing for the flock to actually fit into the rooms.
I read an analogy comparing it to navigating a house from the perspective of a toddler.
Oh, that's a perfect way to describe it.
Right, because suddenly the whole world feels oversized, maybe a little dangerous, and full of all these details that adults just walk right past.
And that really heightens the contrast with the human cast we're towering over them.
Right, and what a cast. You have Emma Thompson playing this sharp-tongued lawyer.
She is brilliant in this.
So good. And Nicholas Braun as the clueless local cop, Tim Derry. Plus, Molly Gordon playing George's estranged daughter.
But, while the physical world building got universally praised, the critical reception on the auditory world building was a bit split.
Yeah, the accents.
Right. Reviewers were pointing out that this is supposed to be an English setting, but the sheep speak in this wild mix of American and British accent.
Yeah, you have Julia Louis-Dreyfus doing her normal American voice, and then Patrick Stewart doing full Shakespearean British.
It is definitely jarring at first, but there is a very specific mechanical reason for it.
To tell them apart, right?
Exactly. When you have a massive ensemble of characters that are all covered in identical white wool, visual cues just aren't enough.
Right, especially when they're running around and the camera's moving fast.
Exactly. So the eclectic mix of accents gives each sheep a distinct auditory signature. It helps the audience instantly identify who is talking.
That makes total sense. But speaking of the visual side of things, establishing the world is one thing, but populating it with believable sheep was a massive technical leap.
Oh, it was a nightmare for the VFX team.
Well, let me ask you this. If the movie is trying to be so grounded and sincere, wouldn't it have been more authentic to just use real trained animals like they did in Babe in the 90s?
You would think so, right? And that was actually their first instinct.
Oh, really? They tried using real sheep.
Yeah, they brought real sheep into the production office during prep to see if it could work.
In the office. That must have been chaos.
Total chaos. They quickly realized that sheep have absolutely zero attention span.
Right, they just want to eat.
Exactly. They just look down and chew grass. Balda knew within minutes that CGI was literally the only way to get expressive, emotional performances.
So they brought in Framestore for the visual effects.
Right, and the VFX supervisor, Graham Page, actually went to rare brood farms to study them.
Yeah, so each character has unique physical traits. But I can't even imagine how hard it is to animate wool.
Oh, it's one of the hardest things to do in CGI. Animating fleece requires calculating millions of tiny twists and curls just to make it look tactile and real, rather than like a flat cloud.
Wow. But what I love is how they integrated that CGI with the live-action cast.
Yes, the puppetry.
Right, because instead of making Hugh Jackman talk to a tennis ball on a stick, which is always so awkward, they brought in this master puppeteer, Tom Wilton.
He operated these incredibly lifelike, articulated puppets right on set.
And Jackman said that was huge for him. It allowed for genuine eye contact and real emotional connection. It felt like an actual animal was there with him.
And Baldo went even further with his animation tricks. He actually brought his whole animation pipeline to the live-action set.
Wait, how did he do that?
Well, he shot location video on his iPhone during prep and then had storyboard artists draw the characters directly onto the environments.
Oh, wow. So he could pre-visualize the whole movie.
Exactly. It perfectly planned out the chaotic geography of the mystery scenes before they even yelled action.
That is so smart. Because all those groundbreaking visual effects would be completely meaningless if the core mystery didn't hold up.
Right, the whodunit has to actually work.
And it does. The filmmakers really had to construct a puzzle that respected the rules of Agatha Christie, but also respected the limitations of a sheep's brain.
Yeah, Mason rigorously studied Agatha Christie's novels to master the art of misdirection.
He built it around 3 pillars, right?
Yep. Motive, opportunity, and the newcomer. And he makes sure the audience has a fair chance to solve it, but it never feels spoon-fed.
And the way the sheep investigate is just hilarious because they maintain their animal traits.
Right, they aren't walking on 2 legs or using human tools.
No, they're relying on animal logic. Like Rhys Darby's character, Wool Eyes, literally has to sniff out clues because his fleece is covering his eyes.
And their understanding of human motives is so flawed, they try to apply flock dynamics to human jealousy.
It's so funny. But, we should talk about the biggest adaptation change from the source material because this is a massive shift.
Yeah, it completely changes the resolution.
Right. Because in Leonie Swan's original book, after all this investigating, the flock discovers that George actually took his own life.
Which is just devastating.
It is so dark. And for a major family film, the studio is just like, yeah, we can't do that.
It was definitely deemed way too dark. So Mason changed the ending so that George was genuinely murdered.
Which gives you that classic whodunit payoff.
Exactly. It ensures the structure pays off in a more all-ages appropriate way. But what's brilliant is that it doesn't lose the emotional weight of George's absence.
Right, because ultimately, solving the mystery of his death forces the flock to solve the mystery of their own grief.
Yes. That is what elevates the film from a quirky comedy into this really profound emotional experience.
And that ties into the most fascinating piece of lore in the movie, the superpower.
Oh, the memory wiping.
Yeah. For those listening who haven't seen it, these sheep have the power to collectively wipe their memories of anything traumatic.
They just choose to forget. They convince themselves that sheep don't die, they just turn into clouds.
It's this magical realism element that hits so hard.
It really does. But the burden of memory falls on a couple of specific characters.
Right. Mopple, voiced by Chris O'Dowd, is the one sheep who literally cannot forget.
And then there's Sebastian, voiced by Bryan Cranston. He's this cynical outsider who actively uses his dark memories as a survival tool.
He refuses to wipe his memory.
Exactly. So the central conflict isn't just finding the killer, it's the flock deciding whether or not to forget George.
Right. They have to choose the pain of grief over the comfort of ignorance,
Right.
which is incredibly deep for a family movie.
It is. And, this theme resonated deeply with critics. There was this one review from Salon that really stood out.
Oh, yeah, the political parallel.
Right. The reviewer interpreted the sheep's willful ignorance as a direct parallel to modern society.
Yeah, suggesting the film is acting as a warning against, mind-wiping inconvenient truths.
Exactly. They compared the sheep's selective memory to real-world political efforts to scrub painful histories from textbooks.
Like slavery or the genocide of indigenous populations.
Right. Now, obviously, we're not taking a stance on that here. We're just reporting what the critics saw. But it is a fascinating lens to view the movie through.
It really is. It just shows how a family film can reflect these super complex societal debates about groupthink and authoritarianism without ever feeling preachy.
Absolutely. Because the emotional payoff is just so strong.
It really is. That willingness to sit with uncomfortable truths is what makes the film a masterpiece, honestly.
It never talks down to its audience.
Never. It proves that you can have bumbling cops, fluffy CGI sheep, and deep philosophical questions about mortality all in the exact same movie.
It's a miracle it works as well as it does.
It really is. So to leave you all with a final thought to mull over. We all laugh at the sheep for wanting to magically erase their bad memories.
Oh, yeah, it seems so silly when they do it.
But how often do we curate our own social media feeds or rewrite our own personal histories just to avoid the discomfort of the truth?
That is a very good point.
Right. Maybe we aren't so different from the flock after all.
Definitely something to think about.
For sure. And that wraps our deep dive into the Sheep Detectives. If you enjoyed this deep dive, follow Roll Credits and share it with your fellow movie fans. And let us know what film we should cover next, old or new. We'll be back soon with more trivia, more movie magic, and maybe a few more clues hidden in plain sight.